Hospitals are supposed to be safe places. But after what I saw, I know better now. Or ask an ER nurse, and they'll tell you. Not everything in the trauma bay can be explained by medicine. For over 6 years, I worked the night shift in a mid-sized ER in Pennsylvania. In that time, I've seen more chaos and tragedy than most people could even process. Overdoses, gunshot wounds, bodies torn apart from horrific car crashes. You name it, and I've probably seen it. I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. At least, that's what I believed, until that foggy night in November. They brought him in just after 2 a.m. Someone found him unconscious behind a Wawa gas station. There was no ID, no wallet. His clothes were soaked in what looked like a mix of mud and blood. But that wasn't what stopped me cold. It was his eyes. Or rather, the complete absence of them. His face wasn't damaged. There was no trauma, no bleeding. Just 2 smooth, empty hollows where his eyes should have been. Like someone had erased them with a rubber. It's just gone. And somehow, he was alive. He wasn't in pain. He was breathing, calm and steady, like he was just sleeping. We rushed him into Trauma Bay 2. I started checking his vitals. Everything seemed okay until suddenly the monitor flatlined. A full, clean flatline. No flicker, no irregular rhythm, just dead silence. I froze. My heart dropped. Why did this happen? But then, just as suddenly as it stopped, the monitor came back. Normal rhythm, normal vitals, like nothing had happened. So I stepped away to grab the attending, and when I turned back, he was sitting up, staring at me. Those empty sockets. God, I don't know how to explain it. Somehow I felt them looking at me, like he could still see me, even without eyes. And then he spoke in a low, cold voice.
You should stop asking questions.
I stumbled back so hard I nearly hit the crash cart. My hands were shaking as I slammed the panic button and called for security. But by the time they got there, the bed was empty. He was gone. Not a single sign that anyone had ever been in that room. We checked the security footage, and that's when the chill hit me. At exactly 2:34 a.m., every camera feed in the hospital blacked out for exactly 11 seconds. Every single one. When the video came back, the bed was empty. No sign of where he went. Just gone. No one has ever been able to explain it. And that room, Trauma Bay 2, they sealed it off. It's off limits now. Nobody goes in. Because the nurses who've worked here long enough, myself included, we've all heard it. Breathing. Coming from inside that empty room. Like someone just lying there in the dark. I was on a shift when the paramedics rushed in with a little girl. She was just 7 years old. She was burning up with high fever, and her small body was shaking in her mother's arms as she cried and whispered prayers. The girl's name was Emily Johnson, so we moved quickly. We got her into the ER and started working to stop the seizures and bring her fever down. Within minutes, her body relaxed. Her breathing evened out. She settled into sleep, peaceful like nothing had happened. While the team monitored her, Dr. Thomas pulled up her medical file on the system. That's when everything started to feel wrong. He froze, scanned the screen again, and then looked up, confused. Emily Johnson had already been admitted that morning. Same name, same age, same date of birth. That same little face in the photo. The system said she had come in at 9:47 a.m. She had been found unresponsive in a backyard swimming pool. And what shocked us the most is her time of death, 10:32 a.m. But now it was almost 7 p.m. And this girl, this Emily, was lying in the bed right in front of us, breathing and, most importantly, alive. We asked the mother if they had come to the hospital earlier that day. She looked confused and said no. She swore this was their first visit. They had just moved into the area the night before. Dr. Thomas went back to double-check the earlier file, and now it is gone, not archived, not moved. It's just completely erased. Not even a sign she had ever been admitted that morning. There were no reports, no records, not even her death certificate that we issued before. It feels like time broke the moment she came back. The only Emily in the system now was the one sleeping in ER ward. That alone was strange enough. But later that night, things got even worse. I walked past her room during rounds. Something made me stop. The door was cracked open, the lights were low, and she was awake, sitting perfectly still in the bed, just staring at the wall. I watched for a second. Then her head turned, slowly. She looked right at me and smiled, but it was not the kind of smile a child gives when they're feeling better. It was cold, like she knew something, like she remembered something no one else should. Her monitor beeped softly next to her, and that's when I saw it. Time of death, 10:32 a.m. It was still there, frozen on the screen. No matter how many times we reset the machine, that number never changed. The room felt colder after that. Even though the heat was on full blast, the air around her bed always felt heavy. Still. I didn't go near her again, and a few days later, she was discharged. Healthy, laughing, holding her mother's hand. But even as they walked out, I swear, she looked back at me one last time, and that smile was still there.
If you felt something watching you during this story, you're not alone. Strange things tend to happen after people hear these tales. So before your lights flicker or your screen goes dark, like, comment, and share it. So you're not the only one haunted. And whatever you do, subscribe before midnight, because they always notice the quiet ones.
It was already a chaotic night in the ER. We had 3 trauma cases back to back, all car accidents. The ER was backed up, and every trauma bay was full. Around 1 a.m., an ambulance pulled in with a car accident victim. He was 26 years old and was pronounced dead on arrival. The paramedics had been doing CPR on the way in. We picked up where they left off: chest compressions, defibrillator, meds. Nothing worked. We tried for nearly 20 minutes before the attending called it. Time of death, 1:17 a.m. Everyone cleared the trauma bay while Jessica and another nurse prepared the body for transfer to the hospital morgue. It was a standard post-mortem protocol. They tagged his toe, zipped up the body bag, and wheeled him downstairs. I remember seeing Jessica after that. She looked tired but calm. It was routine. These things happen, and that should have been the end of it. But 2 hours later, everything changed. At 3:24 a.m., a code blue alert went off. Again, cardiac arrest. Except, it wasn't coming from the trauma bay. It was coming from the morgue. We all stood shocked. At first, we thought it had to be an error. Some glitch or someone entering a wrong code or maybe some crossed wire or mechanical failure. We thought of every possible way. But the tone of the alert was urgent and specific. Security rushed downstairs. A couple of us followed, thinking it had to be a mistake. But when they opened the morgue door, we stopped cold. One of the drawers was open. The body, his body, was no longer inside. He was lying face up on the cold morgue floor, eyes wide open. There was no breathing, no pulse, still very much dead. But he wasn't where we left him, and he hadn't been moved by staff. There was no log, no request, nothing. But somehow, he had moved. No one could explain it. That's when someone noticed the wall. Just above the drawer where his body had been placed, scrawled in thick, smeared red letters, was a message. I wasn't ready. Written in what looked like blood. The writing looked rushed, almost clawed into the surface. We all stood there in silence, frozen. Nobody wanted to speak. No one wanted to ask the obvious questions. One nurse quietly stepped back and vomited. Another whispered a prayer. Security searched the area. There were no signs of forced entry. No cameras showed anyone entering or exiting. And there was no blood trail on the floor, no handprints, no way to explain how that message got there. We checked the logs again. His time of death remained the same. He had no heartbeat, no pulse. He had never revived. And yet, somehow, he had moved. It was real. We immediately ran a lab test on the blood later that morning. It was human. Type O negative, the same as his. They transferred the body to another facility the next morning. No one wanted to go near it again. Since then, the morgue drawer he was kept in remains unused. Some of the staff say it's colder than the others, like unnaturally cold. I don't know what happened that night. I don't try to explain it anymore. But every time I pass the morgue now, I glance at that drawer, and I wonder if he ever actually left. I've worked the night shift in the ER for a long time. Long enough to know that people say all kinds of strange things when they're scared. Most of the time, it's anxiety, fear, trauma. It usually fades once the monitors beep steady and we start treatment. But one man, he wasn't like the others. He came in just after 2:30 a.m., complaining of chest pain. He looked quite healthy, mid-40s, no medical history on file, not overweight. Just pale, quiet, and very calm. Too calm. But what caught me off guard wasn't the way he looked. It was what he said. He sat down on the bed, looked me straight into my eyes, and said,
I'm going to die at 3:13 a.m. Just, please don't let it hurt.
I thought he was joking at first, or maybe having a panic attack. I told him we'd take care of him and started the usual checks. We hooked him up to the monitor, ran labs, and ordered an ECG. Everything looked normal. It was just a slightly elevated heart rate, maybe some mild anxiety. Nothing alarming, nothing dangerous. But he just kept looking at the wall clock. Not once, not twice. Constantly. I kept checking on him, trying to keep things light. But he didn't want to talk. He just stared at the clock like he was counting down something only he could see coming. At 3:10 a.m., I walked past again. He didn't blink. At 3:11, his hands were clenched on the edge of the bed. At 3:12, he sat up a little straighter. His eyes locked on that second hand, watching it move. And when the clock hit 3:13, every monitor in the room went dead. His vitals flatlined, instantly. Not even a warning. Just a wall of silence where a heartbeat should have been. We hit the code alarm and jumped into action. The trauma team flooded the room. We performed CPR, shocked him twice, gave him everything we had, but nothing worked. We pronounced him dead at 3:13 a.m., the exact time he said it would happen. I couldn't believe it. The autopsy later revealed an undiagnosed heart defect, a silent killer. It made sense on paper, I guess. But the science didn't explain what I saw. This man didn't die with fear. He died knowing, like someone had told him, like he had been waiting for it his whole life, and finally reached the moment on the clock that was meant to end everything. I've seen a lot of death. It's part of the job. But this was different. Now, every time I see 3:13 glowing on a screen, I remember him. That quiet man in the ER bed, watching the second hand tick toward something no test could detect. And I wonder, what if he wasn't the only one who knows? It changed everything.